What's up, Ocean? You got Matt here, and welcome another very special guest to the channel, Mr. Commissioner of the BBL and our good friend AAron2420.
Yo, what's going on, guys? It's your boy AAron2420 here.
So, Aaron and I have been friends for a while now. I think the first time we actually spoke might have been in P4G Next Gen, right?
Yeah, we didn't talk a ton then, but we definitely have gotten a lot closer since then. I gotta admit that. It's been pretty much a year now.
For sure. And Aaron, if you guys didn't know, he is the one that is responsible for us being able to record Citra battles. So huge thank you to Aaron, of course, and for all the other help he does around the channel. He's been an amazing friend. So we're going to do a little bit of a commentary together today, but it's going to be interesting. We're going to do a list together. What list are we doing today, Aaron?
Well, Matt approached me. He gave me a few really good ideas, but there was one that was a clear cut above the rest. There was things like a Violet users. There was something about hazards. I forget if it was hazard removal or hazard setters, but we've done best rockers. But the list, it was by far the best choice. Is the top 10 most overrated Pokemon. And this is a list that's actually like a really good idea to me. I've been having so much discussion recently about like really overrated Pokemon. So when Matt DM'd me about this list idea, I knew that I had to be on this one.
It's a really interesting topic because there's mons that obviously it's going to be based on your own preference. If you think like something is amazing, then it's not going to be overrated to you, but that's just kind of the fun of it. Everyone has their different opinions for it, so it's going to be really cool to see well, our list and how it differs from everyone else's in the comments.
Yes. Surprisingly, Matt and I actually, when we were discussing this, we did average our lists together. We had a lot of similar mons. There was a couple that Matt had that were underrated that I felt could not be on this list. There's a couple that Matt thought that were a little too properly rated to be on the list that I suggested. But overall, we came to a really solid conclusion of a list. I honestly at least think that all these mods are overrated, even if I don't think they're more overrated things I personally would think, and I'm sure that Matt feels the same. We did average our personal rankings for these lists together, so while I might personally think a mod is the most overrated, Matt might think it's not the most, but they all nonetheless do belong in this top 10.
100%. Now, before we do get started, the way we kind of like described what overrated was is we just said it gets drafted expecting to do whatever it is expected to do, and it just doesn't meet those expectations. So if you're grabbing a tier 1 mon and you don't use it very well, then that's not necessarily meaning it's overrated. It just means you didn't use it well. Versus a mon that you say was drafted to be a main part of your team and then it just didn't live up to those expectations, that's what overrated for us at least is.
Yes.
So before we do get started though, I just want you guys to make sure you go in the description, check out Aaron. His YouTube channel link and his Twitter will be there. Make sure to go and drop him a subscribe and a follow on Twitter, because we're also going to be doing some stuff on his channel. We should be having a Showdown live going up at some point soon enough. We haven't recorded it yet though, but
yeah,
it's going to be fun.
We'll record it soon.
Yeah. So without further ado, I guess we should get started with number 10 on our list, and I guess I'll be the one to handle this one. And number 10 for us is Nidoking. Now, Nidoking, it's a good mon overall. I usually see it in tier 3 in most tier drafts. Wouldn't you say it's about where you see it?
Yeah, most tier drafts, it depends. Most tier drafts that are standard, like the GBA tiers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I see it tier 3. If it's a split tier in a league such as ICBA or a league that I'm in Hive, it's usually around like tier 2B because it's like the lower end tier 2. But I can see it fluctuate from either. I think it's appropriately tiered at least at tier 3 though, in my opinion.
Yeah, so just to talk about some positives for it, it has ridiculous coverage, right? Like, I mean, you get Bolt Beam coverage, you have Fire coverage, it's everything.
Such good coverage.
It has an electric immunity, which is amazing. It helps you stop Volt Switch, which is good for momentum purposes.
Always needed.
You're a grounded poison type to pick up toxic spikes, which is every team I think should at least consider drafting a grounded poison.
Mm-hmm.
And
I agree.
And its stats are pretty good overall. Like its real weakness in its stats are its defenses. So why exactly is this underrated or overrated to you, Aaron?
Well, personally for me, I feel like if I'm drafting a ground type, one of the things that I really do look for is can this mon take a hit really well, or at least take a couple hits really well. Nidoking, it can usually take a hit, but unlike its counterpart Nidoqueen, when I can invest defense in Nidoqueen to take even super effective hits like a Psychic, Nidoking would drop dead to most of those hits. And especially for a mon that doesn't take hits the best, it also has a really lackluster speed tier at base 85. And while you can say that's not a bad Scarf speed tier, one of the perks of Nidoking is having the ability to run Sheer Force Life Orb. And because of its speed tier, it really does need a Scarf in a lot of matchups, which does hurt a lot, to be honest.
I think part of the reason why we overrate Nidoking is because Nidoqueen is just so much better. It's bulkier. It has pretty much the same amount of attack and special attack. Its coverage is pretty much identical, and it just takes it it's so much better at taking hits. That's the big thing.
Yeah. For a ground type, ground is one of those key types. If you cannot be expected to take, even Nidoking takes a lot from certain hidden powers as well. Things like hidden power ices usually do a fair amount, whereas Nidoqueen can at the very least guarantee that it will not be 2-hit KO'd by most of those pretty effortlessly. So that for such an easy coverage move that pretty much any Mon can run, it's a detriment to a Mon like Nidoking to be handled so easily, in my opinion.
Exactly, and I think we both agree on that. It's just, if you have the option to take Nidoking or Nidoqueen, you take Nidoqueen 100% of the time.
100%.
So that's enough on Nidoking. I think we should move on now to our number 9, which you can go ahead.
Yes. Our number 9 is Mega Kangaskhan. Now, this is a Mon that I believe both myself and Matt have drafted a fair amount. I drafted it twice. I think Matt said he drafted it a couple times as well, getting into this. Matt, why do you think Mega Kangaskhan is an overrated Pokemon?
The big thing here is, in theory, it should be amazing. Parental Bond is a great ability. It's got a great typing and normal being only weak to 1 typing. It's got ridiculous coverage. Its stats are phenomenal, but it has 4 move slot syndrome, and to me, the big thing is you can't run certain moves with other moves because of, well, the way they come from, whether it's move tutors in Generation 3 or Gen 2 or whatever it may be.
Yes. One of the big things about Kangaskhan is Wish, and Wish is a move that comes from a Gen 3 event. Now, you can already sort of see where this is going, especially if you're a Wi-Fi player and have ever had to gen your own Mons before. But one of the bad things about a Wish Pokemon from the Gen 3 events is they can't run egg moves, because you can't breed them for those egg moves, and that misses out on a lot of things for Kangaskhan. Something, for example, I believe it's Crush Claw Kangaskhan, someone suggested to me once. One of the big issues with that, though, is you can't run Wish with it, which is really unfortunate, because with Parental Bond especially, that would be a solid move. You wouldn't need to even invest in Happiness as well, so it's a solid normal type stat, base 70 of course, but it does, I believe, have a 50% chance, if I'm not mistaken, to lower defense. I could be wrong in that, but I know it's a fairly high chance to lower defense. And for a Mon that, yeah, 50%, for 50% hitting twice, that's a really solid chance to get a defense drop. And it's also stab. You don't need to invest in Happiness, which for a lot of Wi-Fi players who know the pain of running return, that's again another big issue. But not being able to run that with something like, let's say, for example, Mega Kangaskhan, because you have to run Wish, it's a pretty big handicap. And it's not just Crush Claw, of course. There are other moves. I can't remember them off the top of my head, but there are a lot of moves that are hurt because of this.
Yeah, there are plenty. I mean, I think one of the big things as well that we just have to clarify is that this is Mega Kangaskhan without Seismic Toss. Like, with Seismic Toss is another story. But the reason why running Wish is so important is because its HP stat is 105, which, for those of you who don't know, is a lot higher than average. I mean, you're passing off, if you're playing level 50, you're passing off 100 HP plus Wishes, which is a ton of HP to recover back something like, maybe you're running a, I don't know, maybe you're running a Rotom Wash. Like, Rotom Wash doesn't have amazing recovery. You send it a fat Wish, you're good to go. Something like Uxie as well.
Yeah.
Like, having Wish on the set is so important. Obviously, it's a good Mon. Like, I think we still agree it's a pretty good Pokemon. It's not banned. It's not allowed in a lot of leagues, but not having the ability to run what it wants to run, having 4 move slot syndrome, is a big downside to it.
I 100% agree. There's almost no matchup you can safely say with Mega Kangaskhan. I know these 4 moves would fit perfect. Usually you need 5 or even some cases 6 plus. So I definitely do agree Mega Kangaskhan is overrated for that reason in particular. That's the big one.
But again, it doesn't mean that it's not a bad Pokemon. It just means it's overrated. That's all.
For certain.
So moving on to our number 8. This is one that Aaron kind of convinced me a little bit for, but I do agree with it once I heard his argument, so I'm going to let him handle the majority of it, and that is going to be Sneasel.
Yes, Sneasel is a Mon that, for some reason, I decide to myself, for some reason, every single time that I go into a draft, Sneasel, well, it fits perfect. It has 115 speed, 95 attack, still isn't that awful with the Life Orb, and for its typing, it's really good. Really good offensive typing, of course, helps, being Ice and Dark. It gets Icicle Crash and Knockoff. Knockoff is a great move overall. It's one of the best moves in the game, and Icicle Crash hits a lot of monsters super effectively. So you think, you know, what are the downsides? It even gets priority too. I forgot to mention that. Ice Shard priority. Great idea. The issue with Sneasel is it's just an awful Weavile. 95 attack doesn't do as much as you think it would do. There are flying types that can literally just roost up on this thing. And if you get, let's say, Toxic, for example, on a switch, you're now literally losing that. Or even just Life Orb whittles you down way too easily. There are a fair amount of Mons that switch into a choice set, which is arguably for Sneasel the better set because you're way too frail to set up an SD, and you don't have the speeds here either to force out as many Mons. Whereas Weavile with base 125 speed forces out a lot more Mons that would normally die to hits from Sneasel, Whereas Sneasel, let's say it's something like a Starmie or even a Mega Absol are speed tying you, which makes a big difference. You wouldn't think that a Mon like Sneasel with 115 speed, it's still a good speed tier, but you wouldn't think that would be as much of an issue as it is until you then go into prep and realize how little this thing actually does and how slow it is as well. And for tier 4, it's not an awful pick, but you end up realizing yourself, I could have picked anything else, and I chose a Sneasel.
It's got just such high expectations put on its shoulders because it evolves into Weavile, and Weavile is obviously... I mean, when I first started getting into Draft League, this was the Mon that was leading in kills pretty much every single season of every league I was watching, and it was kind of impressive. So seeing Sneasel in tier 4, I'm thinking, that's a pretty good Mon, I might as well try that out. I mean, obviously Dark and Ice are two of the best offensive typings in the game with very few resists between them. I mean, the best thing you're going to do to defend against the Sneasel is do what? Have a bulky Water, because they're not weak to any of your coverage moves, and they're not weak to your stab. So, I mean, I just find it kind of crazy that Sneasel is so... It's good, but it's so underwhelming.
Extremely underwhelming.
Hey, I mean, it's useful in some situations. Obviously, if you like, having Ice Shard is really nice to have, especially if you're going up against something like a Salamence or a Garchomp, something that wants to set up all over you and I guess go for game quickly. It's nice to have the priority Ice Shard, but it's not every week you're going to be going up against something like that.
Yeah, and really, unless your team is really Salamence weak, Sneasel is just not a good Mon to pick.
I agree.
I would say, speaking of underwhelming, we do have our number 7 pick, and this would be Hitmontop. Now, well, I'll let you take this one away.
This Mon, it kind of upsets me just a little bit.
It upsets me to even mention its name.
it's such a weird Mon to use because like it's got 95 attack, and we just went over with Sneasel. 95 attack with the right options, even then with the right moves, it's not phenomenal, but it could do some damage. But no one ever really runs it for its attack. They run it because of Rapid Spin and because of Intimidate. And as an Intimidator and a Rapid Spinner, it's nice, but you're not bulky because you only have 50 HP and no recovery. Like, that to me is where this thing really falls. And a lot of the time it is run because you just need, oh, I don't have a Rapid Spinner in my tiers 1 to 3, so let me grab a tier 4 spinner, and oh look, Hitmontop's around, or Hitmonleave, or Hitmonchan. I'll grab that, and you quickly find out it's very useless in a lot of situations.
Extremely. One of the big issues from Hitmontop, I've drafted this Mon sadly billion times too many, I can't even remember, but I've mistakenly drafted Hitmontop more times than I can count. Hitmontop, it's a Mon you'd think, you know, low tier fighting types, usually a lot of low tier fighting types are great. Things like Hariyama, things like even Pangoro I'd argue is okay. Sock, Throw, all these are great low tier fighting types. But then you get to Hitmontop. Hitmontop cannot break well like these most fighting types should normally be doing. It has insanely horrendous 4 moveset syndrome. You think Mega Kangaskhan is bad for moveset syndrome? You need every move in Hitmontop's arsenal, pretty much. You need Rapid Spin, you need Close Combat, you need Fake Out, you need Bullet Punch, you need, I'm pretty sure it gets Knockoff, you need that. You need Earthquake. You need Toxic as well, which is another thing. You can't usually run Toxic because most weeks you need Assault Vest on Hitmontop.
And the majority of the time with this, for some reason, like, because Hitmontop doesn't hit so hard, you want to run Seismic Toss, just to do that 50 points of damage every time. But even then,
it's another move you need.
You're losing out on KOs that you might normally get against something like a Sneasel, for example. But I don't know. I find this to be a very niche Pokemon. If you have Hitmontop, you should want it as a luxury, not as a necessity.
If you're drafting Hitmontop, you did something wrong with your draft. 100%.
Yeah, it's rough. It does have good special defense, I'll give it that. But again, 50 HP, you're not taking too many hits. You
shouldn't be drafting a fighting type for what you want Hitmontop to do. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Do you think if it was a better type, it'd be better? If it was like, I don't know.
I think if it was a psychic type, it would be really good. Even a fairy would actually be really good. But a fighting type? No.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess we'll move on though to our number 6 on the list. Or this is number 6 or number?
Yeah, number 6.
Number 6. And number 6, it's Rotom Heat. Now, Rotom is a good Mon. Rotom Wash, that is. But Rotom Heat is it does a lot of things that it tries to do a lot of things that Rotom Wash does, but it just can't. And part of that is because it has the fire typing. I mean, being weak to rocks on entry hurts, especially if you're running Defog on it. And this is a Mon that really wants to Volt Switch in and out a lot, so it's going to be going through hazards quite a bit. It doesn't get good recovery. It's the best thing it has is Pain Split or like the super recovery berries like Agwav and Iapapa and the other ones. And to me, another big downside to it is, unlike Hydro Pump, where if the big downside to it is just missing, Overheat will lower your special attack, and I mean, That's pretty much all this thing has going for it from an offensive perspective. It can't really use its physical attack because only everything base 50 or 55, something like that. 65.
Yeah.
So.
Wait, base physical attack? Yeah, it's like 65.
Yeah, so you're going to be running special, and you can only really use one overheat before this thing becomes almost useless.
Yeah. Another big issue about Rotoms in general is they don't have the best movesets. We talked about mods that have really bad floor movesets syndrome, whereas Rotoms usually wish they'd had better moves. Of course, you can run like Toxic, if you run any sort of status, you get Pain Split, you usually get Electric Coverage, of course, get like Shadow, you get Hex, you don't even get Shadow Ball, I don't think.
You get Shadow Ball, you do.
Yeah. Oh, you do? Okay, so that's not bad then. And you get whatever your signature Rotom move is, and unless you're a regular Rotom who doesn't get anything, and just gets better speed. And every Rotom usually gets like really good coverage, like for example Blizzard, Ice Electric with Rotom Freeze, really good coverage. Rotom Fan, that's just a disgrace, no one talks about that. Rotom Regular, it at least makes up for it in the speed, of course. It's slightly faster, it's not a bad Scarfer, of course, so that's not bad. Rotom Wash, water offensively isn't a bad typing, and it does have a solid offensive stat, actually. And, of course, Rotom Wash is, again, a really fat mon in general, only one weakness, not bad. Rotom Mow, we'll talk about that later. And Rotom Heat, that's where you get to the, oops, I fucked up by picking this, because Rotom Heat is not only weak to hazards, but it's expected to be a momentum-gaining defogger. It can't really do that well, though, when you just throw up rocks and you punish it really quickly. And not only that, but its weaknesses are really common types too. Water and rock. Rock is a little less common of a stab, but it's a common coverage type. Water, if your team doesn't have a water type, what are you doing? And of course, while you can say, you know, Rotom Heat does punish water types, if it's a fast water type clicking Hydro Pump, you're not exactly going to 1v1 unless you're a Scarfer. And if you're Scarf Rotom, then you're not investing into bulk, so you hurt yourself really badly in that department.
I think the big thing is that it's just weak to fire, and I see a lot of people saying, oh, but I need a Fire, Water, Grass core, and I need a fast electric type, and well, first of all, Rotom's not fast, and second of all, you don't need
it's not weak to fire.
No, I'm saying they need a Fire, Water, Grass core.
No, you said Rotom Heat was weak to fire.
Oh, my mistake. My bad. Anyways, so you guys kind of understand what I meant. People want a Fire, Water, Grass core and say, oh, I just cover a lot of common weaknesses, but it doesn't do a good enough job of checking the things that you want it to check. Yeah, it has an immunity to ground, which it's 4 times weak to, but you are going to come across some Mold Breaker Pokemon, some Turbo Blaze, or whatever the different names for that same ability are. I just find there's just not enough positives with Rotom Heat compared to Rotom Wash, and that's why it gets overrated.
Or even any other Rotom for there too, to be fair.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I think Rotom, Rotom Fridge is it's kind of cool to see because Bolt Beam is obviously an amazing coverage, or amazing type coverage, so...
Yeah, it'll be for tier 5 if you really needed a low tier electric, it's not a bad option. Whereas Rotom Heat, there are a lot better options for its tier even, let alone in general.
And for tier 3, I mean, you're expecting a lot out of it.
Yeah, it's a valuable tier to have.
Yeah. So, moving on though, I think you're covering this next one.
Yep. Next up, we got Raikou. Now, Raikou is a mon that I personally, it's a mon that I preached for a long time as an overrated mon. I'd argue even Jolteon is just a flat-out better mon than it. Now, that might not be a popular opinion, but Raikou in general is a very overrated mon. It's a tier 2 mon. It's okay bulk. It gets Calm Mind, of course. That's not bad. Electric type, of course, really solid. 115 speed, I think I already mentioned that, but 115 speed isn't awful. However, for fast electric, it's not as fast as things like Koko, Jolteon, Zeraora, Mega Manectric. It's not as powerful as things like Koko, Zeraora, Thundees. Even Zapdos, I'd argue, is better just because of the options it gets moveset-wise. It, of course, isn't going to be getting as good coverage as pretty much any electric type. Things like Thunders have far better coverage, Koko has far better coverage, and of course those are tier 1 options. But then even if you look into lower tier options, you get to things like Heliolisk, which have far better coverage. If I go
Electivire?
Yeah, Electivire. Well, Electivire is a bad mon, but it has better coverage nonetheless. Even Galvantula has better coverage because at the very least it has coverage for types that would normally resist electric, and of course does get ground coverage still. But I feel like that's just Raikou in general really is underwhelming. It's one of the, in my opinion, the worst tier 2 Pokemon in general. I'd argue it's borderline tier 3, but again, not a popular opinion. but it's just not a good Pokemon.
It has, I guess, a bit of people have like a lot of nostalgia for it because a lot of people did come in Generation 2. It's a very popular generation from, I guess, my point of view, but
Yeah.
it does have coverage issues, and that's really the main thing here. Like, you have to be shiny to run, or shiny and rash nature to run Aura Sphere, which means you're going to be losing out on special defense, I think it is. Yeah, mild is minus defense.
Special defense.
And then the rest of its coverage is Shadow Ball, Signal Beam, its electric moves, and Hidden Power.
It's really not good.
Yeah, it does get like extra sensory. I forgot to mention that as well, but I think you also need to have be shiny for that too, if I'm not mistaken.
You don't need to be for extra sensory. All the legendary dogs get that.
All right, so then, look, overall, there's a lot of things that this Pokemon wants to do. Having Calm Mind is a nice addition. You can run the Sub Calm Mind set, which is something that I guess shows up quite a bit in if you draft Raikou.
It's really the only good set.
Yeah, no, I'd say that too. I mean, I've seen Austin use a Specs Raikou that couldn't work, but I feel like Raikou will only do well if it has a really good matchup. Other than that, it's just kind of there to gain you momentum and try and break. But I mean, with 115 special attack and a lot of mons having the potential to run Assault Vest or just be defensive in general, you're not going to break too many things with Raikou.
Yeah, even things like Entei and Suicune, for example, the other legendary dogs, they can benefit as well from having both the offensive and defensive nature, whereas Raikou can't necessarily get that diversity. It's really just locked into a sub-Calm Mind, and it's the only viable set in 9 out of 10 games. Whereas even things like Entei, and I get it's a little unrelated, they do a lot of different things, but even Entei, for example, can run the defensive, like, Will-O-Wisp set. Suicune, of course, is known for being offensive but defensive. And it just, even within its own group of the legendary dogs, it's severely outclassed, in my opinion.
I agree. Moving on, though, to number 4 on our list. This might trigger some people, but...
A lot of people.
Look, Empoleon is overrated. Empoleon is overrated. Like,
it's a bad meme.
Yes, it's not the best defogger, it's not the best rocker. It's a Water Steel type, which are two phenomenal typings that you would want to work well together. But for me, where this Pokemon loses a lot of its shine is that it does not get any recovery at all.
Not at all.
And that is huge. No pain split, no, like, I mean, it gets rest, but you're going to be taken advantage of, basically, is what happens with rest. Like, I don't know how much I can say about this thing. It gets Stealth Rocks, great. It gets Priority in Aqua Jet, cool. It gets Defog, awesome. It's immune to Toxic. It's a bulky water that can't be toxic, awesome. It has decent coverage. Flash Cannon, Grass Knot, Ice Beam, Hydro Pump, that's cool. And you also have that Signal Beam as well, I see. So it's in theory, it should be good, but not having recovery on such a defensively oriented Pokemon is a huge negative for it.
It should have gotten Roost.
Yes. Yes.
It's a bird, but doesn't get Roost. Why doesn't it get Roost?
Didn't it get introduced in this gen too? Like,
Roost is literally a TM now. Why doesn't it get Roost?
Unbelievable. It'd be so good with Roost.
It would easily be like a solid tier 2 Pokemon if it got Roost.
For sure.
But it
I
doesn't.
would rather have this over Skarmory if it got Roost.
Oh, 100% any day of the week. But, of course, it doesn't get Roost. Why? Nobody knows.
Give it Roost.
Give it Roost. And hashtag give Empoleon Roost.
Yes. Make the hashtag give Empoleon Roost in the comments below if you're here this far.
Yep. Speaking of Pokemon that need moves, number 3 for the overrated Pokemon list, a mon similar to a mon we covered earlier, but this is, in my opinion, a lot more hyped up. We have Entei. Now one word that is why Entei is overrated. No coverage. This thing, if you look into an Entei moveset, you know in most games you're either running the defensive Will-O-Wisp set, which I mentioned earlier, it's mostly a meme set, but like Will-O-Wisp, it's not an awful option. Most cases though, Entei, whether you're running it physical or special, and it has good offenses in both, you're getting extremely shafted. You're running Stone Edge, Sacred Fire, Flare Blitz, E-Speed in most cases on Entei, unless you're going to run like Bulldoze and be cheeky, which doesn't usually work. Oh, Stomping Tantrum. My bad, I guess Stomping Tantrum now.
Because no Earthquake. Like, it doesn't get Earthquake, which is incredible to me. I mean, look, a big answer to Entei are probably Rock types and Water types. Not having like a really good, I mean, obviously Grass Move I wouldn't be surprised that, I'm not surprised it doesn't get, but not having a better ground move to deal with those Rock types, it's a bad thing, it's a problem. And another thing is you have to be, I think it's Adamant and Shiny to run Extreme Speed.
Yeah, it's really awful.
I mean, it's not as bad as being Rash with Raikou's Aura Sphere, but still.
Actually, it's not E-Speed, it's Sacred Fire, I think. I forget, but I know it's one of the two.
It's one of the two. I was debating between my head. It might
Point
be between the two as well.
Point being is it's horrendous. Knowing into a game for a mon that has such a crucial move to run that you need to be adamant over Jolly. It's not even just running a defensive minus in nature, because at the very least for Entei, having a move like Sacred Fire, that would be really good even if you had to run it like a Rash or like a Lonely Nature. The issue is you have to run it adamant. And, well, even then, I guess, to be fair, you couldn't run a plus speed nature. But the point being, you cannot run a plus speed nature, which, for a mon at a base 100 speed tier, is huge. Base 100 is a speed tier that is an overly competitive speed tier to hit. If you're running a base 100 mon, you 9 times out of 10 need to run at a plus speed nature in most matchups. It's a common speed tier. Most teams have a base 100, at least a couple even. But Entei needs to run out of it. So you need to already draft another base 100 mon, or you're getting prepped versus it every week very effortlessly. Most mons that have anything over it can run a plus attack nature. It's extremely easy to creep.
It's very easy to deal with in prep, but once you get into the game, Sacred Fire, a band of Sacred Fire from Entei, if you don't have a good team composition, you're going to be in for a rough time.
Yeah, of course, it's still a threatening move, but for a mon that can't outspeed a lot of the metagame, and of course, to get that speed, you need to run a Scarf, it's not the best, to be honest. And it's a little underwhelming because of that speed tier, and I think that definitely does hurt Entei a lot. And also, of course, the coverage thing as well.
Yeah, do you think it would be better, though, if, let's say, it had maybe 110 speed, but you had to be adamant still, or to run E-Speed or Sacred Fire, whichever one it is, or if you were what it is right now, and you could be any nature to run whatever it is?
I think, honestly, even it should really have, like, any... If it had Raikou speed... Because at the very least, even then, running Adamant, you would hit just above the 100 mark. If it had Raikou speed, it would easily be worth the hype, in my opinion. Hell, it would probably even be like a low tier 1 mon if it had 115 speed, just because of how spammable Sacred Fire would be, and how much of a crucial speed tier it would outspeed. But because of the fact that it's only hitting 299, it's such an... If I look in prep, the first thing I look for when I prep Entei is, okay, what fast mon am I going to run Scarf just to outspeed any sort of Entei variant? You can run it at even like a... For example, look at Adamant Garchomp, running Scarf, bam, Entei is now hard counted. Running, let's say, Adamant Lando Eye, or even a modest Lando Eye with Sheer Force, bam, countered. Or I could run a Rock Polish Lando T, bam, countered. Any offensive ground type, any offensive water type, any offensive type in general has coverage for Entei. As long as it has speed 299 speed, or at level 50, I think it's like 151 speed or something, I don't remember. But point being, as long as you have speed it, with like a Adamant Nature Entei,
you're good.
You're set.
Yeah.
You're good. If your opponent brings a Jolly Entei, that's a blessing to you.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, it means it's missing out on one of its best moves. Again, being Sacred Fire or Extreme Speed. We can't remember, but it's one of the two. We're sure of that.
Yeah. It's Sacred Fire. I actually just checked. And that's the only redeeming thing about Entei is Sacred Fire. The only redeeming thing.
Sacred Fire is an amazing move. 50% chance to burn is great. I mean, sometimes you might not even need Will-O-Wisp, depending on your luck, if you're running the defensive set.
Yeah, because Sacred... Yeah, I was say, unless you're running special Entei with, like, Lava Plume or something, and even then, it's still a good chance to burn. And that's another thing. With the utility of Will-O-Wisp, you don't even usually need it because of its burnable moves, which, again, means you have so much wasted potential, but you could throw in an extra move. Like, let's say if this thing got... Even something like Wild Charge. If this thing got Wild Charge, it would be so good. Even, like, Superpower, Earthquake... But you're missing out on such potential because of the lack of needed moves on Entei.
Coverage.
Needs more of it.
Yeah. So, number 2 is a mon that I think it was probably the first strong or like the best mon I used in my first draft, and that's Kyurem Black. Yes. So, Kyurem Black, it can I just say 170 attack is something. That's a lot.
That's a lot. That's really good.
It's more than it needs, to be honest. Like,
it's much more.
It's a lot. It's a really good mon. To me, it is in the top 10. I think I have it around like number 7 in my latest list. And AAron, I think you disagree with that, right? You don't think it's top?
I hard disagree with that. I think Kyurem Black. I'll actually let you go in a little more before I go on my Kyurem Black rant. I want you to get your ideas out.
Yeah. So its stats are phenomenal. Like, you can set up subs on so many different things. You get Roost. This thing gets Roost, but Empoleon doesn't. And its coverage is nice. Like, having good Dragon Stab, having good Ice Stab, except on the physical side, having ground moves, no Earthquake for some reason, having Steel moves, having Fighting moves. It's got good coverage, but it always seems to be so lackluster because you want to do so many different things with it in a certain match. You want to run Life Orb, you want to run Scarf, you want to run Band, you want to run Z-Move. You want to do tons of different things, but you just can't. So go ahead and tell me your thoughts, because
now
your thoughts are different.
Karen Black, one of, if not the most overrated Pokemon of all time. Personally, I had this on my list at Karen, number 1. Matt had it
number 5.
A fair amount lower. Yeah, he had it number 5, so it did average at our second place. But Karen Black, in my opinion, is the most overrated Pokemon of all time. It's 95 speed, as we mentioned. Not hitting 100 speed tier for an offensive mon is a really bad thing. It forces a lot of scarfs, and for Karen Black, locking itself into its already not the best special... 120 is not a bad special attack, but when you're not running with the boosting item, it just hurt a lot. Keep in mind, things like 120 are really good because they can break, not because you can just throw in a scarf and it can just hit average, like a base 90 mon with the Life Orb, for example. Or I think it's base 100, but the point is, it's not the best with a scarf. Now, it's not bad, and it does have really good special coverage. However, the physical attack, we mentioned that 170 physical attack, it gets like 3 somewhat useful moves for physical. Bolt Strike and Dragon Claw, really good physical moves. Then you get to like Outrage, which isn't awful. If you're in a Z, it's not bad. But again, it's not the most spammable move when fairies are such a dominant typist meta. And then the next best physical moves are like Stone Edge, not that good with an ice type, keep in mind, and Iron Head. Those are the only other remotely okay physical moves. And then you get into the special coverage, and the special coverage is good until you realize it's really just, if you look at it, it's just Ice Beam and Earth Power. Then otherwise, you get to things like Focus Blast, you're missing it all the time. Flash Cannon, Dragon Pulse, I don't even think this thing gets... No, it does get Draco Meteor. I was gonna say Draco Meteor, I overlooked it for some reason. It gets like Psychic and Shadow Ball. These aren't the best typings. Like Earth Power and Ice Beam, sure, those are good typings. Bolt Strike on the physical end, sure, it's good offensive move. But you almost always need to run it mixed, which then does hurt its otherwise not awful bulk. So no matter what, in some way, no matter what set you are running, you are handicapping Kieran Black just by bringing it. Because you can never run it in a perfect set. Because Kieran Black is either losing out on the bulk that people say is not a bad bulk, which to be fair, its typing already hurts its bulk anyway. You're hurting out on its offense by running on like the Scarf or a defensive set. You're hurting it on its speed by not running it on a Scarf set, or unless you're having webs, which is another story. But in general, Kieran Black is already handicapping itself in several ways, just based on what set you run as it is. Z moves are so mandatory on this thing as well, which is another thing that hurts its speed as well. But you can just bring Protect, and you've already countered Kieran Black's Z if it's running a Z move, and then bam, Kieran Black is no more of an issue. Because you saw it burn a Z move, you know you can just bring in any faster mon and just get so much chip on it, switch out, keep getting chip, and bam, easy. Hazard weakness, kill it off. I think it gets Defog? No, it doesn't get Defog. I know at least Zekrom and Reshiram gets Defog, but that's another L. In general though, Kieran Black, people make this thing seem like it's a top 5 mon. People put it up there like just under things like Lando and Celesteela, which is far untrue. I've even heard people go as far to say it should be banned, which is again very untrue. In general though, it's a mistake. It is so much wasted potential. This is the definition of Game Freak wasting potential on a Pokemon, in my opinion. And that is why I hate Kieran Black. I could write a thesis on it. If I were to give a thesis on anything, I would give a thesis on how overrated Kieran Black is.
Just to end Kieran Black's discussion on a bit of a lighter note, I think it is a very, very large step behind what to me are the top 4 Pokemon in standard draft, being Steela, Lando, Mew, and Koko. But it just not having Ice Punch is the biggest thing here. It's just give it, like, Ice Punch itself isn't even a great move. It's 75 base power, but with 170 attack, like, I think this thing would be like, the reason why Kieran White is banned is because it gets Ice Beam and it has 170 attack, or special attack rather.
Special attack.
Yeah, and Kieran doesn't get an equal opportunity from the physical side. I find it unfortunate. That's all. It's good. It's just not amazing, and people overhype it so much. That's all. That's for me. You have much stronger feelings. I know. I just heard it. Everyone just heard it. So, yeah. But now we do have some honorable mentions, unless you have a little bit more to say on Kieran.
No, if I went any further, I would go too deep down the rabbit hole. you would get spam with dislikes, and I would also be getting theses to respond to in the comments. So I think I'll hold off, but just know, if you want to buy my book on why Kieran Black is overrated, it'll be on Amazon in 2092 for $29.99. That's all I gotta say on that.
All right, so we'll do some honorable mentions right now, and the first one we're gonna be looking at just quickly is Decidueye. Now, this thing, I think it gets a lot of love because it's everyone's favorite starter for some reason. I personally think Primarina's cooler, but that's just me.
I think Incineroar more.
Anyways, so people have differences with it, but Decidueye, it gets Roost, it gets Shadow, what is it called?
Whatever the arrow is.
Yes, the one that traps you in is nice. It gets U-turn, it gets Nasty Plot, it gets Swords Dance, all these great moves, but people just expect it to be a really good band-aid solution for a lot of different drafts, and that's why I think it deserves to be on this honorable mention list. Yeah,
it's pretty much just a mon. You throw it on there because you're missing like a defogger or a mon that has mixed offense, but it usually is pressed in a lot of games to come, and it really doesn't. There's always a better mon for whatever set you'd run. That's really it.
Next up, though, the other one that we have is Rotom Mow. I mean, we talked about Rotom Heat. This is not, to me, for its tier, it's better than Rotom Heat. It's still not that good of a mon. It's just they're like, oh, I need to pick up an electric type, I need to pick up a grass type. Rotom Mow, there we go.
Yeah, the only reason, honestly, that Rotom Mow didn't make the actual list, in my opinion, is that at the very least, grass does cover ground, which is the only type immune to electric. Otherwise, it would have made the list. That's really it. It's Rotom Heat, but it covers ground at least.
And then the last one is Hawlucha. Now, you were more on the you were more talking about this one making the list, so I'll let you handle this.
Yeah, basically, the reason that I have Hawlucha on this list is because, and this was certainly true a few months ago, that Hawlucha was the godsend of format. Kokolucha ran the meta. People would spam Kokolucha everywhere. They would get a lot of wins, but now people really know how to prep Kokolucha. It's not the hardest counter in my opinion. I'd argue honestly Koko Medicham is much more threatening, but that's my opinion. I think it's just a lot scarier just because of how better it wall breaks. Whereas Hawlucha, you really do need the +2 to set up with, and it's just so much more. It's so much easier to just prep a Whirlwind user or Aurora user, and in most cases it handles. People say that like Zapdos is one of the only reliable counters. In most cases, you can just get a bulky water,
bulky
and it handles
psychic.
it at least. Bulky Psychic again. It handles it at least enough to the point where you can loose check it, and you really don't need to roar it out or phase it out once, or just kill it off once. And then, in most cases, again, just phase it out once, and it's essentially useless.
There's also the option for red card, right? Which is...
Yeah, of course, again, red card, again. It's just an item, and that's all it takes. And you force it out, it's dealt with.
And the other item that I just want to point out, I know this is handicapping me a little bit because I'm running Kokolucha in the PCL right now, but Sticky Barb is a really good way to do it. Sticky Barb, if you guys don't know it, basically if you hit your opponent if your opponent has a Sticky Barb and you hit it and you have no item, then the Sticky Barb will now go to you and you lose an 1/8 of your HP, which is a lot. Yeah. And then you don't have your Unburn anymore. So it's a nice little counter, it's a nice little tech, but the one thing I will say about Lucha is that it does force a lot of prep, regardless of if you bring it or not, and probably more so than a lot of other mons.
Yeah, I think it's still a great mon. It's, in my opinion, the best mon for its tier on this list, but it is still, of course, definitely overrated.
So go ahead now with our number one, and this is the first one we spoke about, this is the first one we said, this is on the list for sure, and Aaron, take it away.
It's Hoopa Unbound. Matt had this as his number one. I had it as my number two. I had it just under Kieran Black. Personally, I think Hoopa Unbound is definitely an overrated mon. I've heard even my good pal John Flames go as far to say it's better than Magearna, which is certainly not the case. I don't care how many times I hear it. Magearna is very good mon. Hoopa Unbound is barely a tier 1 in my eyes. It's really good because of the wall breaking potential. It has 160 physical attack, 170 special attack. And while you can say that's really insane, especially for a mon that has Psychic Dark, it gets Stab Knockoff, Hyperspace Fury, breaks the Protect. It gets nice coverage, of course, but the issue being its speed. All you need is a U-turn mon above base 80, or even speed time base 80. You could run a Berry and just bring a thing. Hell, you can go Pyapa Berry Quillfish and just click Pin Missile, countered.
Done.
You could bring any sort of bug move on the physical end. It is countered. It is not even hard. Well, you can say, bug isn't the most common offensive typing. You know what one of the most common physically offensive move is? U-turn. And that's all it takes. Hoopa is countered.
If your team does not have a U-turner, then Hoopa could be a problem for you. But if you have U-turn, you're fine.
If you don't have a U-turner, you did something wrong drafting. That's all I gotta say.
Exactly.
That's not even just saying, you know, Hoopa runs through your team now. It's just you did something wrong drafting if you don't have a U-turner. At least one. That's all it takes. And Hoopa is now hard countered.
Yeah. Look, I think Hoopa has great coverage. It's got amazing stats outside of its defense, and its speed is kind of mediocre. But for me, where it really kind of loses, like, I didn't even have it on my top 10. I don't. And I mean, I feel completely comfortable saying that. The big thing for me is its speed at base 80. It's not fast enough to run a Choice Scarf every single week and feel comfortable, because there's going to be those base 85s, base 90s, and plus. Yeah. And it's not slow enough to run Trick Room effectively. Of course, there's going to be some really fast teams that it can take advantage of when it's in Trick Room. But I mean, base 80 speed is it's good. It's average. Yeah,
unless if you're a mon that can very easily spam one single coverage move versus a team, you can't necessarily do that. And especially things like a Scarf Psychic type at base 80, it really does hurt. Because you're going to lock yourself into, let's say, Psychic, any Dark type comes in. And especially with Hoopa being neutral to Dark, well, of course, the Dark type does help with Pursuit weakness. Pursuit still does a lot when Hoopa switches out.
60 defense.
It's very easy. Yeah, it's not a physically defensive mon, so you could easily Pursuit Trap it if it locks itself into Psychic. So choice sets, in a lot of cases for Hoopa, are also not the best. You're usually running like a setup spread or like a 4 attack spread. Of course, Choice Scarf isn't bad, but again, it runs into the issue of locking yourself into a single coverage move and then you're ruined. So it does have a lot of issues in general, and I think that Hoopa is way too highly valued. It's, as I said, it's barely a tier 1 mod in my eyes. I don't see it dropping to tier 2 necessarily, just because people hype it up a lot. I think it's also a lot better than tier 2 mods, but it's one of the worst tier 1 mods in my opinion.
Yeah, it definitely has too much hype around it, and that's the big thing here. Just, it could be good, it could be useful in certain situations. You build the right team around it, cool, but at the end of the day, it's got way too much just excitement surrounding it. Too many fanboys.
Yeah, if you want to draft a tier 1 wall breaker that's a Psychic type, draft Victini. Victini isn't like a top 10 mon, but it's a very easy Psychic wall breaker that just spams coverage and bam, kills things.
Anyways, that's our list. We have a really, I think, solid list of the top 10 most overrated mons. And I mean, I don't think there's anything that comes to my mind right now saying, yeah, no, this is also overrated. But yeah.
I mean, I'd say Silvally, but that's not Matt's opinion. But otherwise, we got it.
Silvally is not my opinion. I think Silvally can be useful in certain situations, but I am slowly leaning towards your side of the argument, though. Anyways, guys, if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like on the video, and of course, subscribe to the channel. Let us know what your top 10 most overrated Pokemon are in the comments below, and check out the description once again for Aaron's YouTube channel and his Twitter links. His Twitter is super active, super awesome, and his YouTube, and I'll put your Twitch down there as well because you do stream a lot on Twitch. Hey. And yeah, make sure to go and check him out. He's an awesome guy, an awesome content creator, and I'm sure you'll love his content. Any final words?
My Twitter's a top 5 Twitter in the community.
Oh yes, easy. Go ahead. Top 1. Go ahead, plug yourself, do whatever you need to do, and we'll head out.
That's it. You covered everything.
Awesome. All right, thank you guys for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Aaron, thank you for coming on. And make sure to check out, make sure to check out the video we're gonna do with Aaron on his channel, hopefully soon.
Oh, right, I forgot about that. Yeah.
All right, thank you guys for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you next time.